Astrology is the myths of the stars and planets, telling the themes and plots of our lives. These stories come to us daily through our satellite, the Moon. She is constantly spinning astro news. Hi, I'm Merrylin Leblanc with Moonwise. We're not formally in fundraising mode today, although KSFR is going to continue through Monday with the fund drive. We will do some active fundraising tomorrow morning during Folk Remedy and one of my favorite shows, Sunday Blues with Jeff Dowd. But actually today, if you'd like to make a contribution to KSFR while you're listening to Moonwise or after you've heard Moonwise, you can call 428-1527, leave a message, and I'll get back to you after the show today. I have with me in the studios this afternoon Daniel Fiverson, a frequent guest, a monthly guest on Moonwise on KSFR. Welcome back, Daniel.
Merrylin, thank you so much. What a wonderful way to celebrate International Astrology Day. It's really exciting to be here.
To be on the air, yes. Well, Daniel has offered to give a 30-minute astrological consolation for a contribution to KSFR for $150, and I will do a consultation as well for a contribution of $150 to KSFR. So if you're able to do that, you can do that as a sustaining member, and I can explain that when I call you back. Call 428-1527. Lots of stuff is going on with the beginning of spring tonight at 10:30 p.m. We have the Vernal Equinox, where the sun enters the sign of Aries. It's aligned with our equator in tropical astrology at this particular time. So Daniel and I are going to be talking about this equinox, the planet Mars. It's very much associated with the sign of Aries and where it is, and other planetary energies that are joining that. This is a packed show, and it's a packed springtime, believe me. So just taking the equinox, do you want to say something about that in general? Dan?
Well, I think it's safe to say we all know the expression. There seems to be no rest for the weary. We're all, I think it's safe to say that each of us in our own way has been feeling these deep emotional waters from the Pisces solar eclipse that we just had, and all these planets stacked in Pisces. So we're coming to round two. The good news is that we're moving into Aries. And with the equinox, we're not being dealt a new hand. We're still holding the cards we're holding, but we get a choice to perhaps get a couple of new cards or make some different choices about the cards that we're holding. It's a new beginning. It's an opportunity to really start afresh and make some new conscious choices.
And from a solar year perspective, this is the action-taking time of the year. And basically, if I go back to how I saw the winter solstice and stuff, this is a point in time when we're beginning to see glimpses of things to come. You know, people are feeling energies that aren't yet here yet. You know, there's these things are kind of emerging out in the open, and what's emerging on a massive level is actually very characteristic of Mars in Sagittarius. So maybe we should just jump to Mars in Sagittarius, since Mars is, so to speak, the ruler of spring, the ruler of Aries, the beginning.
Sure. Well, let's break it down into two parts. Let's talk about Mars first. From an evolutionary astrology perspective, Mars is our conscious choices. Pluto, which is our evolutionary engine itself, is our subconscious intentions. It's our deepest desires for security, but we don't know about them. Pluto is chthonic. He's subterranean. It's deeply in our subconscious. We're not aware of it. He hands them off to Mars. Mars has been called the lower octave of Pluto, and the reason why is because Mars takes those deepest needs for security, those deeper desires of Pluto, and it acts on them consciously. It's what we're consciously pursuing. It's what our choices are, and it's where we're acting. So what Mars is that conscious part of us. It's the cutting edge, if you would, of our evolution. Sagittarius is Jupiter's sign. These are our beliefs. This is what we believe to be true in the world. It's a personal belief. It's a subjective belief, if you would. It's relative to each of us. Neptune is ultimate, is the whole truth. Pisces, Jupiter is our belief system. And so what Mars in Sagittarius is going to be about is really going to be about focusing on what is the truth of what we're pursuing. Are we really pursuing what is relevant and what is coherent with what our soul is hoping or has intended for us to do?
And the truth really is focusing on things that we refer to as Sagittarian, and that is on overall cultural beliefs, political beliefs, assumptions in those areas that carry us forward. And I mean, what we've already seen in the political campaigning scene is a picture of stuff that's going to even get more intense during this spring season, because Mars is heading towards Saturn in Sagittarius as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of like a struggle with tradition. And one of the things that I just think is obvious about this campaign season, and even the pundits who are in the mainstream, who are really controlled by making lots of money and whatever, but even they're indicating this, that people are fed up with the status quo.
Oh, it's like the man in the movie Network who threw the window open and shouted out, I'm mad as hell and I can't take it anymore. And we're seeing it on both fringes. It's not just one belief system, but each of the candidates we're observing is totally committed to a total belief system that it seems to be contrary from everybody else's. That seems to be, whether it's Ted Cruz or Donald Trump, even Bernie. They're totally committed deeply committed to what they believe, and we're seeing the clash of these different beliefs.
Exactly, and that's like Saturn representing the organizational structure, the status quo, and Mars, like, okay, wait a minute, how can I make a dent in here? How can I fight the system? How can I go beyond the system and digging into it? And
Saturn is committed to actualizing, to actually creating in form and shape whatever that belief is. It's not just abstract thinking. Saturn is going to make it real. It's going to make it concrete.
Yeah, and these energies, they're what we're trying to do is kind of show you there's really strong connections from these planetary energies in terms of what we call aspects, and we'll try to minimize the astrologies. But we mentioned that the planet Jupiter is connected to Sagittarius. It's said to be the ruler of Sagittarius, and Jupiter is in an area of the sign of Virgo that is very much connected to that Pluto that you, Daniel, were talking about in terms of the subconscious and unconscious energy that's stirring behind everything. And Pluto, we've talked about a lot over the last few years, being in Capricorn, really shaking up our organizational structures, our government, and other kinds of structures as it goes through Capricorn, and what we think of order in our lives, and what we think of success even in our lives. What does that really mean? And so anyway, Jupiter is in a nice connection with Pluto to tie in all the upheavals that we have been experiencing, witnessing over the past, what year is it? It says 2016, and the past 4 to 5 years we've been experiencing this. And so this kind of seasonal time is bringing all of that up to be churned and played with, not played with in a nice way. I like to use another word, handled. It's kind of like, well, we can go and have that experience and say, yes, we want to continue doing that. No, we don't want to continue doing that. And one of the areas that I personally see this coming up with, though, as we mentioned at the beginning, has to do a lot with our beliefs and assumptions.
Right. our truth. What's our personal truth?
Right. And there's those of you that are listening that have gone through various self-examinations through different kinds of therapy, etc. Hopefully you've come to an understanding of some of your core issues and core beliefs. Well, I know I personally have been revisiting those as much as last night in terms of just reading a book that a dear friend of mine who passed away had, that her sister gave to me, about radical forgiveness and about how the soul sets up dynamics, and which is kind of another way of looking at all this horrible stuff that's going on, where in some way our collective soul and all of us that are here in some little way that's our own have set this up with our beliefs, our core beliefs about ourselves and about the world we live in.
Right.
Daniel's just looking at me like, okay, where do we go from there? First of all, one of the other things that is really bringing this up big time is that also is it Wednesday, the lunar eclipse?
Yes.
The day. This Wednesday we have the full moon, which is eclipsed, full lunar eclipse, total lunar eclipse. In our time, very early in the morning, like 6-something in the morning. It might, because of daylight saving time, it might be visible in the western sky as it's setting.
I read that it's going to be visible over most of North America, some portion of it at any rate.
Oh, yeah, because it takes a long time for the Earth's shadow to move across the sun as they're both moving, and across the moon. And so anyway, that eclipse is, of course, as you know, from my perspective, all full moons are revelatory, and in this case, revelatory about how we live spiritual principles in our lives. And as I shared a couple weeks ago, the symbols behind it, there's the symbols of coming together with people as spiritual beings. And so, just talking about the assumptions that come up with the Mars and Saturn and Sagittarius, it's like, what assumptions do we have as spiritual beings that actually don't bring us together?
Right.
They get in the way.
Right. Well, that's kind of what I alluded to with Mars and Sagittarius. And it's going to be accentuated as Mars turns retrograde in the middle of April. Because, I think I've said this before on the show that from an EA, evolutionary astrology perspective, the retrogrades are like a Uranian or Aquarian archetype where we take a step back, we get some objectivity, and we look at, in Mars' case, we look at our choices, we look at our behavior, we look on what we have acted on and pursued, and examine it to determine if it really is in alignment for what is best for us, for what's fulfilling, what brings us joy, however you want to measure how you measure it, how it works for you, to measure it according to your scale of whether this has been effective for you or not. Has this really functioned, and does it need to change? So this all comes into play. Jupiter is making us look at what's our truth. Neptune is making us understand what our absolute truth is, and it's opening us up to all the things that are in our subconscious that perhaps we've denied or not been aware of. Saturn is requiring us to make it real. Uranus is requiring us to really choose what's our own, not what someone else has overlaid on us. The conditionings that we've picked up from parents or peer groups or our work environments or what we've read in the newspaper to really decide for ourselves what's true. So all these things are coming into play. It's a tapestry, and it's very powerful, and it extends all through this entire spring season through the end of the year, really.
Well, the truth is right now we've come to the midpoint of this show. It's time for the Moon Minute. You're listening to Moonwise on KSFR or streaming on the web at ksfr.org. We're at 101.1 FM here in Santa Fe in northern New Mexico. And here's the Moon Minute. Stay with us. We'll be back shortly. You're listening to Moonwise here on KSFR 101.1 FM in Santa Fe, New Mexico, broadcasting to throughout northern New Mexico, like up in Taos and wherever. And we are, KSFR is the we here, is still in fundraising mode, although not formally doing it today. The beginning of the show, I mentioned that for a contribution of $150, you can have a 30-minute consultation with Daniel Fiverson, my guest for the day, or you can have a consultation with me. And you could call now or throughout the show, or actually for about a half an hour after the show, 428, or anytime actually, because of what I'm going to say after this, 428-1527 would be the number to call, not our regular pledge line number that we've been giving out for the last week and a half. 428-1527. You can leave a message on that line, and I'm generally the person who picks up the messages on that line. And so consequently, I will call you back and we'll talk. And so there you go. So Daniel and I have been talking about this equinox, the beginning of spring, and this spring season being loaded with all kinds of energies that are reflected, say, in just if we use the current political campaigns as just as a metaphor for what might be going on in many of our lives at this time. There's so much energy happening this spring, and it all comes to play. We talked a little bit about the lunar eclipse before we went to the Moon Minute, but and we've talked about Mars and Saturn being both in Sagittarius, since Mars is the ruler of spring. And what's one of the fascinating things about these two planets also is that during this springtime, they're going to go retrograde. You want to say something about that, Daniel?
Yeah. Well, I spoke a little bit about what Mars is going to look like going retrograde. We're going to be looking at what our choices are and how those choices have really worked for us, and making some new choices. And this really ties in. This is the base note, if you would, of the entire spring season, because we are entering Aries, which is Mars sign. So it's an undertone. It's kind of the drumbeat of the next 3 or 4 months. Saturn going retrograde. Saturn wants to make things real. Saturn is form and structure and gravity. It brings things down to earth. It's the incarnating force itself to begin with, if you would. And so Saturn going retrograde, again, we're going to look at, what are we creating and what are we actually building, and what is it that we're making real in our world? What are the structures that we have put our energy into to leave behind when we're into next month, when we look back at what we did this month? What will we have? What's our, in sense, our personal legacy from week to week or day to day? What have we built in our own lives and in the world of the world around us?
And Saturn, as representative of our government, has really been demonstrating for us that we are in some of the darkest hours of this country. Literally, when you look at the unrest, and you look at a presidential election that, at least in our lifetimes, we've never seen the likes of, in terms of
I think it's really one of the things that have all experienced in this eclipse is this emotional current, just of our, like, I'm embarrassed for my country, for how we look to the rest of the world. I'm embarrassed for the way that this election is going, and
there's so many levels. It's not just what's happening in the Trump campaign,
right,
but the fact that
the media has buried Bernie Sanders,
yeah,
that Hillary Clinton is allowed to stand up, and many people believe that every other word she says is a lie. There's a lot of a non-truth in these campaigns, and then there are lies about what is true from other candidates, and I don't want to get partisan here, and it's not just what I believe, but it's we can all observe this, and no matter which side of the wherever we stand within this, as we look across the tennis court at our opponent or whatever, however you want to categorize it, we're seeing lies and truth.
And one of the things that because I use the symbols so much for them, where Saturn goes retrograde, and Saturn's going retrograde on March 25th, it's Friday, at 17 degrees of Sagittarius. The symbol is an Easter sunrise service. Yeah. But it sounds really optimistic in a way, like a new birth, and let's hope that it is. But sometimes, especially when you talk about retrogrades, we're going to go back over, and if you go back before the metaphor of Easter sunrise, we're looking at, in the mythology, we're looking at some of the darkest hours, the whole metaphor of the crucifixion.
Mm-hmm.
And so what this is saying is, what we're seeing that's representative of this country is the underbelly, the stuff that's been in the closet, and the closet door is open, and there's spotlights on it. That's how I see it.
I'm always optimistic in the long run, Merrylin. We're definitely passing through some dark days, and we've all had dark days in our lives. But I can frankly say that some of the worst things that have happened to me, I'm so grateful for, because they brought me to an awareness and to circumstances that I would not have otherwise been open to receiving. And I think our country is also going through it. And we have to remember that we're living in a collective, and we're not here to get knocked down or to get beat up or to get punished. We're here to go forward and to evolve. But sometimes we need these crises. We need the cataclysms. We need
to
the
clean
difficult.
Out the closet.
Exactly. We're being scrubbed. It's probably a very Buddhist philosophy. We're being scrubbed, and as we're getting scrubbed, disorientation is a positive thing, because when you're disoriented, when you're confused, when you're kind of knocked upside the head a little bit, it gives you a chance to say, wait a minute, what's going on here? And to be able to look around and make some observations that you otherwise would not have made, because we get so focused on what we're doing that we really lose our awareness of everything else except what we're focused on.
Well, you mentioned earlier, too, that Mars will be going retrograde, and Mars does that on April 17th. On April 18th, Pluto goes retrograde, and then into Mars we have Mercury retrograde. So one of the things, we could say a little bit about Pluto going retrograde at this time, but one of the things I noticed when I was noting all these changes of directions, we'll have Jupiter during the spring go direct,
right.
But all these changes, most of them, I think except one, all are happening in the early hours of the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, oh, how symbolic is that?
Mm-hmm.
And it sort of goes back to this Easter sunrise service that it's sort of the opportunity to really look inside and look at the shadow issues, and then the opportunity to perhaps celebrate as the energy starts to move forward again.
Well, 3:30 a.m. according to Oriental medicine is the hour of the heart, and it's also the time when monks meditate. And it's been said that the veil is very thin, that the portals are open, and many writers get up and are writing early in the morning. So the channels are open. But these, with Neptune and Pluto being retrograde, these are collective planets. These are transpersonal planets. It's happening on a very, very deep level. It's affecting all of us at the same time. Mercury goes retrograde, and we feel that it's a personal thing. Venus, even Mars, these are all personal planets. But when the transpersonal planets are retrograde, we're seeing great potential for change and evolution in the collective itself.
Whoa! So this is a lot to look forward to. We'll talk a little bit more about each of these retrogrades as we come closer to them. We're wrapping it up here in the last 3 minutes. I know, Daniel, you and I have offered astrological consultations for a contribution of $150 to KSFR. And I mentioned, too, that you could call and leave a message at 428-1527, and I'll get back to you. Daniel, you're going to be doing some workshops or a talk coming up in Albuquerque.
I've got an NCGR event coming up in
early
April.
NCGR?
National Council for Geocosmic Research. It's an international astrological association. Many astrologers across the planet belong to it. Very well known, very active. And there is a New Mexico chapter that meets in Albuquerque. April 6th, Wednesday night, I'll be doing a public talk at Crystal Dove, downtown Albuquerque, on the philosophy of evolutionary astrology. What is evolutionary astrology? And then the following Saturday, we're going to do a 3-hour workshop, and it will be on Pluto. The title is The Karmic Axis. It's going to be an interactive workshop. Bring your charts. Looking at Pluto and the lunar nodes in the chart in terms of your evolutionary intentions, your karmic necessities. It's really going to be exciting, very powerful workshop. All of the details are available on my website at www.evolutionaryastrology.com. Also in April, something really exciting, and I think that this was also an interesting Mars Sagittarian event. The Jeffrey Wolf Green School of Evolutionary Astrology is publishing a Journal of Evolutionary Astrology. The first issue will be released on April 7th. I am very proud to be included as one of the writers who will have material in it. It's really going to be exciting. I refer everybody to it who wants to learn more about astrology, especially evolutionary astrology.
All right. So there you go. Lots going on. We have a little less than a minute. So any final words, Daniel, on how to navigate through the spring?
Yep. Stay calm. Breathe. Write down your dreams. Neptune, a lot of Neptune energy right now. Our dreams are very, very active, very vivid. There's messages there from the soul, from our subconscious, from our higher self. They can kind of tell us what's going on, things that we're not seeing, things that we maybe didn't want to see or don't know even that are happening. And pay attention to the messages you get from your outer world, things that happen that seem to be synchronous or quite coincidental. I don't believe that there are coincidences. I believe that our outer world is the mirror of our inner world, and we can learn a lot by just being in the moment and paying attention to what's happening.
Bye for now.